morning, Daily Huddlers. I have a topic, Kathryn, that I don't think you're familiar with, but did you know that more and more births are home births now?
No, I did not know that.
More and more women are delivering babies at home. But the American Medical Association has said, you know what? Since it's at home, we can't really call it a delivery.
Uh-oh.
It's not delivery. It's DiGiorno.
No.
DiGiorno. Oh, yes. Let's get off that topic. Good morning, Daily Huddlers. Thank you all for being here this morning. Kathryn, my wonderful co-host, and I have a topic that I suspect we all can relate to, and that is why we avoid difficult conversations. I think we all do it. But before we dive into something a little bit uncomfortable, let's set our intention and get comfortable. So I'm going to ask Tom this morning. Tom, please tell me, how are you?
Tara, I am the way I say I am, and I am excited for the day and grateful to be here.
Excited for the day and grateful to be here. I love it. Thank you. That is beautiful. So let me ask Rashida, is she still with us? I don't see all the people. Rashida, talk to me this morning. Tell me, where are you and what are you grateful for?
Good morning, guys. Can you please ask me what you just asked me, because I just have a phone call interrupt my.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
I just said, where are you and what are you grateful for?
I am in my universe setting, and I am grateful to be here. Also to share my space with the universe and with my conscious awareness. Thank you.
I asked the perfect person. Thank you for sharing that. And you know what? I will ask Giovanni to tell us all. First of all, tell us what time it is, and then I want to know who you're going to hug today.
Okay. The time. It's now. The time is now. And who am I going to hug today? I'm going to hug a friend of mine I'm going to see today.
Okay, that's a lucky friend. Thank you for sharing that. Welcome to the Daily Huddle Wednesdays, when we talk about communication and relationships, because we know that more effective communication builds better relationships. What do better relationships build? Better communities, better families, and better business. So let's talk this morning about something that I truly think we all can relate to. I don't know about you guys, but I have the tendency, if I'm not being very intentional, to avoid difficult conversations. Let's peel that back and ask ourselves why we do that. So I'm going to ask Kathryn to kick us off.
Yeah, thanks, Tara. It's a good one. I'm like you. I have a tendency to do that as well. And it takes me back to, you all may remember, we actually did a podcast on this when I took a spontaneous trip up to Pennsylvania for Tom's graduation. And Tara was with me, and she was helping me figure out how to make this spontaneous trip happen. And we had worked out most of the details and most of the sort of logistics. And there was one thing that was standing in my way. And it was that I had a lunch planned with a dear friend of mine who I hadn't seen in a really long time. And the lunch had been planned for months. He had already reached out and confirmed, and I had said yes. And I was going to have to call him and say, I can't go to lunch with you. And it was eating me up. I was even a little embarrassed how much it was eating me up, because in my head, intellectually, it sounded pretty simple. He's going to understand. But this is my dear friend, Joe, and we were partners. We did a podcast together. And when we stopped the podcast, he ended up moving to Florida, and he'd been down there for about a year. And so we didn't have our regular cadence of meetings. I wasn't as much in touch with him. So when he said he was coming into town, I was like, yes, absolutely. Let's do this. So why did I want to avoid that conversation? Joe is super special to me. He's super understanding. It's not like it was going to be the end of our friendship. But Tara, you really helped me peel that back of why it was so uncomfortable. And I think there are several reasons why we avoid difficult conversations. One of them for me is I'm a pleaser. And I don't want to make anyone feel bad. I don't want to disappoint anybody. I don't want anyone to be mad at me. So if I just avoid the difficult conversation, then I can avoid those uncomfortable feelings that I might have. So that's number one. Number two is that I really think I was out of alignment with myself. Joe's a dear friend of mine, and I like to treat my friends in a way of keeping in touch with them, checking in on them, being in connection with them. And I hadn't been doing that. So I saw this lunch as an opportunity to reset and to prove that he was really important to me and I'd missed him, and let's, get together. So my fear was that if I didn't do that, then it would show something else, right? So I was out of alignment with myself. So it's our values. If we're in alignment with our values, it's much easier to stand in our truth and to just speak it. And the third reason that I want to bring that Tom actually helped me see this morning is this fear of being judged, of being seen or being judged. Because there was something I didn't want to be seen in that conversation. I didn't want Joe to think I was a bad friend. So if there's something I don't want someone to see, I most certainly don't want him to see it in me, So Tara, you are classic at saying, you can't offend me. I know what my intention is, so you can't offend me. So tell me the truth. Give it to me straight. Right?
Yes.
And that lives in here too. So, and I know you're going to talk about the science of it, but this piece about being in alignment with who we are makes it a lot easier to have a conversation, feel the uncomfortable feelings, and to just move on and be clean and clear in our relationships.
So as I listen to you, and I think I know the answer, but I'd like to hear you express it in your own words. Let's take a few steps back into that story. And if I'll put myself in there, let's just say I was back in my early 30s and I had to cancel a lunch. You know what I would have done? I would have made up something. I'm sick, my car imploded, whatever, just to completely avoid it. So fortunately, I've grown from that. But just tell us why didn't you just make up something that would take you out of actually having to make the decision to cancel the lunch? Why didn't you just, for lack of a better word, lie?
Well,
I'm not gonna
lie. The thought crossed my mind. Sick kids, something that's unavoidable, something that's socially acceptable. A reason that would be like, I don't have to talk about why I have to miss this meeting, something that just avoids the whole thing. The reason I didn't do that, and I want to just another nuance, there's bold-faced lying and then there's half-truths, what we call white lies or whatever, just some sort of like kind of off kilter. And I am classic for thinking through that too. I try not to do that. I try and be really clear and direct and really honest, but it could have been some variation of the truth. So I want to, make that distinction too. The reason I didn't do that is because I wanted to be clean and clear in that relationship. The one thing I wanted when I left that conversation is I wanted to feel unburdened. Mm-hmm. I wanted to feel like I told the truth. I wanted to give, and I thought that was a gift to Joe. And if I was really going to be canceling and I was going to be expressing what a good friend he is, then I needed to say the truth, as uncomfortable as it was.
Right. So that to me, that really goes back to values. And I think that's why for me personally, I've grown in this space is because I've done some really hard work on my values. And one of them is to be truthful.
Mhm.
And it's easy to be truthful when it's easy, right?
Oh, yeah.
But there are so many times where, and I do want to touch on the science of this a little bit, but we're really talking about emotions, and we're talking about strength and confidence and fear. And I've given this some thought too. And I think about the many times that, let's don't overthink this. I'm not talking about some big, juicy, emotional conversation, little things like when we have to cancel plans, when we fail somebody,
Mhm.
when we made a commitment and we don't follow through. That's another time when we could say, we could make up something. Oh, I'm sorry, this happened, that happened, I couldn't, or we could blame the other person. But here's what I have learned about rather than just owning our failure and apologizing, when we do that, and when we do it with true sincerity, we are doing what the reason why you and I are on this show, we're deepening trust and relationships.
Yes.
Sincerely, deeply apologizing. And when we skip over difficult conversations and just make up little white lies, we are missing an opportunity to build a deeper connection with somebody that we care about.
Well, that's it, Tara. Because again, I thought I have an opportunity here. I thought meeting him was going to be a way for us to reset me, to prove that like, I really do care about you. I really do. This is just how I'm showing it. But in not being able to go, I realized I had another opportunity to build that. And that was to be honest and vulnerable and to build that connection. And you're talking about radical honesty.
Mm-hmm. And you just touched on, I think a big word is most of these difficult conversations come with an apology. And to apologize is vulnerable. And it takes strength. And many times it doesn't feel good and it doesn't feel comfortable. But when we work our way through it, I think we feel better for it on the other side. I've
I
used this
agree.
example.
I just want to say one thing. I think that's where the magic lives. I know you're going to touch on whatever the science is of this connection, the vulnerability. And like, I feel like it's this sparkly place where you're like, whoa, that's what I'm here for. That deep connection, not the avoidance of the uncomfortable feelings so I can just skirt by.
Mm-hmm. Right. I think, and I don't want to go too much into science, but here's what I know about really digging in and maybe apologizing. And before I go into the science, I do want to touch on something that I've read a couple of times recently. And maybe when we get to questions, we can open this up. But I have read a few times, and it's a little bit more in the women empowerment space. Like if you're late, when you come to a meeting, rather than saying, I'm sorry, you say, I'm sorry that I was late. You say, thank you for your patience. So you really don't apologize. I don't subscribe to that. I don't like it. I mean, if I have wronged someone or failed someone, or I don't know the answer, or I didn't show up prepared, whatever it is, I owe that person an apology. And to avoid it is maybe easier. It's avoiding that difficult conversation. It certainly is easier to own where we have done something wrong. And in your case, in this story, you didn't do anything wrong. You just made a decision based on your priorities and asked for understanding and forgiveness. So I don't want to belabor apologies because, then that does definitely take us into a disempowered place. But to just sincerely tell somebody you're sorry is powerful.
I think what you're talking about is owning and responsibility. And so, it's like, I own that I'm making this decision, or that I made a decision that made me late, whichever, it's responsibility. And saying, anyway, yeah, so I want to get us to the place of the honest conversation of what is it like and why is that empowering? What does that do for us when we stand in our truth and we say, this is my truth, and I'm not responsible for your reaction? Because the other thing we do sometimes is try and that's where the lies come in, I think, is I want to kind of manipulate or maneuver his reaction or his response so that it doesn't show up and make me uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
I stand in my truth and say, this is the truth. I own it. And he gets to have his reaction, whatever it is. I can be with that. He could have been flaming mad, that's up to him. But I could have dealt with that because I was in my truth. And he wasn't.
Absolutely. Peter just put in the chat, how about we do both? We apologize and we thank the person for their understanding. And I think that's boom, double win.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yes.
and I, not to belabor this point, but to do it sincerely, to take your time with it, because a lot of times, my first husband, we used to talk about this. Don't apologize and then say but, because it just
Right.
wipes away the whole apology.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I didn't, whatever the thing may be, but you, then
Right.
it kind of negates the whole thing. But a little taste into the science of what goes on in our brains when we go there, I think, is empowering. So I've talked a lot about serotonin, and serotonin is the opposite of depression. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter that we can create when we feel confident and proud and someone compliments us or we accomplish something. Interesting, a little fun caveat. If you feel like you need more serotonin, have a whole grain, low protein lunch. It will boost your spirits. So anyway, note on that. So that is serotonin, but the challenge with serotonin and why it's so addictive is because it leaves our body very, very quickly. When we go into a conversation where we allow ourselves to be vulnerable and own our truth, we are building trust, which elevates something else, and that's oxytocin and vasopressin. And those have a lot of hormone qualities, and they can live in our bodies for much longer. So it's a very different experience, and that quick boost of energy and happiness and feeling good, which is definitely important for our physiology. But oxytocin and vasopressin stay in our body and help us to celebrate those deep, trusting relationships. And with effort, we continue to work on those. All that to say, it's so easy to give the easy answer, to keep the person happy and move on down the road, but it doesn't do anything for the opportunity that we've missed, which is to connect with somebody and show them how honest we truly are. I have a quick example of something that I'm not proud of. And it was very recently. This was 3 months ago. I was in a setting of many people, and one of the people in the setting was my older brother, and he asked me a question. And I, out of respect of him, I'm not going to give too much detail, but before saying anything, I answered the question dishonestly. He asked me if I did something, and I said no. And before I even had time to think, how should I respond to this? There's all these people here. I don't want to get into this. I share this because what we're talking about takes practice and intention. And all these years of my working hard on showing up with my values, I failed myself and I failed my brother. So less than an hour later, we were all on our way home from this gathering. I first called my husband and told him what I'd done. I'm like, I can't believe this. How am I going to tell him? And then I called my brother and I said no, but the answer is yes. And there was a little bit of silence. And I said, before I even had a chance to think, that flew out of my mouth. I felt pressured. I should have said, let's talk about this later. And the reason why I shared this morning is because it did exactly what I'm talking about. My brother said, Tara, thank you for telling me that. He said, I trust you probably more than anybody I know. And so I screwed up big time, royally, but we have a chance to correct it too.
Mm-hmm.
We're not perfect. And that did bring us closer. I wish I had been honest in the beginning, but I still course corrected based on my values. So thank you for that reminder.
Well, I love that you bring in that one, the demonstrating, the showing how, one, we're not perfect, and where, give ourselves grace when we need to course correct, and the element of practice. If you're going to go out and ride a bike for the first time, or if your kid, better yet, is going to ride a bike, you don't expect them to do it right out of the gate. No, you practice. What is that like? How did that feel? God, I was so much more connected to that person. I need to remember that. That's what that brings, trying little ways, things that seem like easier conversations to have before you go out and have the biggest, most difficult conversation, that you need to just try and say, where am I not being, if honesty is one of your values, where am I not being 100% honest? And what would it be like to really be honest? Instead of saying, no, I can't, no, I don't want to. And that's why I can't, that's the truth, or, whatever it is. So, yeah. And I see Giovanni's raised his hand. So let's dive in. I'm so curious what's coming up for people. Gio.
Hi. This is a great conversation, and I think we probably need a series on how to have difficult conversations. There is this context for I'm not going to be able to make it for lunch, and that one it's not so difficult to have, and then there is I don't love you anymore. There is I want a divorce. Then there is you're fired. Then there is I've been lying my entire life. Then there is I don't know if this child is yours. Then there's all these really difficult conversations, and where I have found myself in the moments where I have found myself questioning my ability to have a difficult conversation is when I discover, well, there's two things. When I can see that what I'm about to say is going to really hurt that person. And I don't want that. I really don't want that. And then there is, I can see how I've been lying for a long time, pretending not to. And I rather continue, and I rather want to continue lying. However, it's really damaging. All of it, everything, every aspect of the relationship. And so I'm wondering, in the context of in what you were pointing to, Kathryn, this commitment or this choice or this core value of honesty. There is so much, it seems to me, Sorel would say, there's no difficult conversations, get off it, right? But it seems to me there is so much at stake with honesty. And for me, and I don't know what are your thoughts, but for me, I've been having a really hard time discovering the miracle of honesty. It almost seems like lying is better, but it's not. It really is not, but it seems that way, Anyway, what are your thoughts on this thing?
Wow, Gia, you really know how to get to the heart of it with all of those different difficult conversations. And you're right. They are. I think what I would say is, lying feels easier. And at times in the moment it is, in that moment you get to avoid that difficult conversation. And you say that there's so much at stake with honesty. And I'm really curious, how much is at stake for not being honest? Because when you're sacrificing your integrity and your truth, and you're hiding who you really are from all of us, the gift of who you are. And I know you well enough to know that I don't think that's the legacy you'd want to leave behind.
I was giving examples for the
I
opportunity
know.
of conversation.
And I know.
Hey,
Wasn't me.
At times I've been there, but just,
But that, what I've said though, as big as it feels, it can be. I mean, we had someone come on a few weeks ago and talk about legacy we leave and how it's daily and it's in every conversation. So even that, the radical honesty, as small as it may seem, leaves a legacy, and you get to have that connection, which is what Tara and I talk about all the time. So what's the cost of not being honest is my bottom line.
I see we have a bunch of people's hands raised, and I want to jump to that, but I do want to chime in here real quickly. And I almost brought this up. Someone called me just last night in tears because he was breaking up with someone, and she kept saying, "Are you not in love with me? Are you not in love with me?" And finally, it seemed like the kinder thing would not be to admit it. But let's think about that for a second. As long as he continued to say, "I still love you," it gave her hope, and that was false hope. And as much as it hurt her in the moment, he had to set her free. And so sometimes I hear you. This could be a whole nother conversation. So I just wanted to throw that out there. It was so timely. It was just last night. But Ronald, I see you had your hand up next. So talk to us.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting conversation. But one thing I think that's coming present to me is the age factor that you brought in earlier. Does the age makes a difference? Just the scientific approach of it, as far as age, as far as serotonin or oxytocin move in the body and all that, does that makes a difference? I mean, so what you would say at 30, you won't say it at 60, because your body, what was your dopamine at 30 is no longer your dopamine at 60. So I'm thinking there's a scientific approach to it. I don't know where to touch it, but it seems like you can really correlate it that way. What's your take, Tara?
Well, thank you for bringing that up, because it's not so much age and physiology and science as it is maturity. You're right in the dopamine world. Like dopamine for younger people is much more easy to access. However, I think that it has much more to do with maturity than it does with age. And when we're maybe in our early 30s, we haven't stopped to think how much we treasure bonded, trusting, safe relationships. And as we grow and mature, I think it becomes more of a value, which encourages us more. I mean, I wish I had been that mature in my early 30s, but I would have been the one to say, sorry, I have a doctor's appointment, and move on down the road. Today, I would never dream of doing that. So yeah, great question. Rashida.
Good morning, everyone. I'm telling you, I started coming on the call since Friday of last week. And something I learned in my early age with my grandpapa and my grandmama, and it's just talking and just saying the truth. And one of the things that I realized when I was in college, I would say it's 32 years ago, the professors look at me and says, Miss Wright, do you really think before you talk? And I says to him, why did you say that? And he says, because you don't think before you talk. I said, because I'm telling you the truth. Because I'm telling you the truth. You say I don't think before I talk. I say, I'm going to tell you the truth today, tomorrow, and the rest of my life. Why? Because I don't want to remember what I told you the day before. Because once you tell the truth it is. And this is what I was taught when I was growing up. My grandpapa used to beat us when you tell a lie. So I have learned early age, if you tell the truth, it will set you free. And with that, I'm out. Thank you so much, Tara.
I love that. Thank you, Rashida. It is so true. It really, for me anyway, the truth does set us free, and it sets other people free, Tara, as you described. Yeah, we have time for one more, Tom.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Kathryn. Thank you, Tara. What about difficult conversations with ourselves? Because I think a lot of us, from time to time, we might not necessarily be fully honest with ourselves. And in hearing you talk about, the feelings and the reasons why we might not, but the opportunity, to unburden and to trust, it all seems very applicable, with the internal conversation. I just wanted to ask you your thoughts.
Yeah, no, it's great. And I'm smiling because Gio said, I love Tom in the chat, and I chimed in with me too. So, and apparently you have a love fest right now.
Oh, thank you.
That's right.
Thank
We're all
you.
loving
else
Tom.
chimed in.
I'm taken with the Marine Corps, but thank you for asking.
Oh, that's
Well, yeah, gosh. Well, I do talk to myself. That's what you're asking. Sometimes out loud. No, I think it's a really great question. And I think what you're pointing to are the values. If we aren't clear with ourselves, and if we don't know what our values are, and if we aren't honest with ourselves, then we can't be honest. There's no way we can access the honesty with others. So, and I love that you're bringing it, because often I think we think it is like sort of, that's our natural state, is just to be honest with ourselves. But I know for myself, sometimes I'm not. I'm mostly because I'm wanting to convince myself of something, or even to avoid something. So I think to sit down, and there are lots of ways to do this: journaling, meditation, being quiet, walking, running, whatever it is that gets you in your space with yourself. And whatever the question is or the topic, to say, okay, truly, no one's here. I don't have to share this outside of this head of mine. What is my truth right now? And I often start there and I tell myself I don't have to share it. Doesn't even mean I have to go out and do, like, I just need to know for myself, and then I can decide what to do next. So it's a really great point. And Tara, I don't know if you have anything to add to that before we close.
You nailed it. That was on point.
It was on point. I love it. The name of Tara's business. Everybody, thank you so much for this. Luckily, this wasn't a difficult conversation to have. It was lovely to be with all of you and to hear your thoughts. I love this. This often, I think, does more for me than anyone else. So anyway, have a wonderful Wednesday. We're going to close out as we always do. And if you feel so moved, pick one of these of our 7 tenets and focus on it today and give yourself the gift. Give yourself the gift of love, of having that conversation with yourself, honoring yourself, knowing who you are. And as Tara said, eat more plants. Have a whole grain, low protein lunch and boost your serotonin. The earth will thank you and your body will thank you. It will allow you to stress less. You know what else will allow you to stress less is when you sleep. Boy, do I love my sleep. Get your 7 hours. Give yourself the gift. Go to bed early. Set your routine. Allow yourself that time to wind down. And laugh a lot. Laugh often. Laugh hard. Find those jokes. And actually find the humor in things that even aren't humorous. Just try it. See how it goes. Last but not least. That's right. You got to move that body. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow on Thursday on the Daily Huddle.
Thank you, everybody.
All right.
Some
Thank
blessings, everyone. Thank you.
That
Thank
was
you.
so much fun.
you. All right. I love
Yeah,
you
very
Thank
nice, Kathryn, Tara.
Thank you,
guys.
Tara.
too.
Good stuff.